ask you something. Is it a sin to stop praying? It might sound like a weird question, right? But believe it or not, an ancient prophet named Samuel had a really strong and kind of surprising answer. And his answer came out of this huge national crisis, right when a brand new king was facing his very first big test.
Okay, let's start with this idea. It's pretty powerful. What you personally consider a sin. Well, that says a lot about your spiritual level, about what really matters to you. And for the prophet Samuel, there was one sin that was just a bigger deal than all the others. And it's one that, honestly, most of us probably wouldn't even think twice about today.
So where do we find Samuel's answer? It's buried in this incredible story, a really pivotal moment in Israel's history. We're talking about a terrifying threat, a completely brutal ultimatum, and yeah, a brand new king who had absolutely everything to prove.
All right, so let's get into it. A king's first test. This is where we meet King Saul. Now, he had just been picked to be Israel's very first king, but here's the thing. Nobody was really sure if he had what it took. He hadn't proven himself yet. But oh boy, that was all about to change.
So the crisis kicks off when this enemy commander, his name is Nahash the Ammonite, surrounds an Israelite city called Jabesh, Gilead. The people there are totally trapped. They're desperate. They basically offer to surrender, They're like, we'll serve you, just please, spare our lives.
But Nahash's response, man, it's just horrifying. He says, okay, I'll make a deal with you on one condition. I get to gouge out the right eye of every single man in this city. And you've got to understand, this wasn't just about violence. This was about permanent public humiliation for the entire nation of Israel.
So when Saul gets the news, his reaction is just instant and powerful. He is absolutely enraged. Then he does something pretty shocking to summon an army. He cuts up a pair of oxen and sends the pieces throughout Israel, with a message that's basically, if you don't come fight, this is what happens to your animals. And it works. The people are filled with this fear of the Lord, and they rally to him. And with this massive army, Saul leads a surprise attack and just completely crushes the enemy. A total victory.
And this win, it was exactly what the nation needed. Saul proved without a doubt that he was a real leader. So they all gather at a place called Gilgal, and he has his official coronation right there in front of everyone. For the first time, the 12 tribes are truly united under one king.
Okay, so everyone's celebrating, right? They've got their new king, they just won this huge military victory, and then the prophet Samuel steps forward. And just like that, the entire mood is about to shift. We're going from the battlefield right to the heart of the nation's spiritual life.
And I want you to notice how Samuel starts his big speech. Before he says anything else, he makes them confirm his own integrity. He's like, have I ever taken anything from you? Have I ever oppressed you or taken a bribe? He's establishing his moral authority because he knows he's about to hit them with a really difficult truth.
And here it is. Samuel basically reminds them, hey, God has always been your king. He's the one who's rescued you over and over again. Then he drops the hammer. He tells them that demanding a human king, just so they could be like all the other nations, that was a huge sin. It was, in effect, rejecting God himself.
Now, to prove this wasn't just his personal opinion, that this was a direct message from God, Samuel gets ready to do something, well, something pretty extraordinary.
He looks out at the whole nation and says, now stand still and see this great thing the Lord will do before your eyes. He's basically telling them, don't just take my word for it, watch this. He's about to ask for a sign from heaven to prove just how serious their sin was.
And what does he do? It's so simple. Then Samuel prayed. That's it. But that simple action, it's the turning point of this entire story. In this incredibly tense moment, standing between a prophet and a whole nation, Samuel just turns to God.
And God answers. Big time. He sends this massive thunder and rainstorm. Now, you have to understand, this was during the wheat harvest. In that part of the world, at that time of year, it never rains. So this wasn't just a storm, it was an undeniable, supernatural sign.
And the effect is immediate. The people are absolutely terrified. They see this impossible storm and they get it. This is proof of God's anger. And they confess right there to Samuel saying, we've added to all our other sins this huge evil of asking for a king.
And it's right here, in this moment, in how Samuel responds to their fear and their repentance, this is where he reveals his own deepest personal conviction. And it's the answer to the question we started with.
See, for Samuel, the sin of not praying wasn't just about, forgetting to do a religious chore. It was way deeper than that. It was about a fundamental shift in who or what you rely on.
It was about choosing to trust in human plans, in kings and armies, instead of actively going to God and seeking His will.
So he reassures the people. He tells them God isn't going to abandon them. And then he says something just incredible. He makes a vow. He says, "Far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you." Did you catch that? For him to stop praying for them, that would be a sin. He saw praying for his people, intercession we call it, not as a nice thing to do, but as his absolute sacred duty.
So you really have these two different paths, right? On one side, you have relying on God. That's all about seeking His will, and it keeps you on the path to righteousness. That's what prayer is all about. But on the other side, you have relying on human means. That's about following your own desires, which, as Samuel shows, leads you away from righteousness. That's the result of neglecting prayer.
So as Samuel is getting older, nearing the end of his life, his final message isn't just a warning. It's more like a charge for the future. It's the legacy he wants to leave behind for everyone, including their new king.
What does he tell them? He says, look, remember all the amazing things God has done for you. Fear him and serve him with your whole heart. And he even promises, I'll keep teaching you the right way. But he also gives them a really stark warning. He says, if you keep doing evil, both you and your king are going to be swept away.
You know, Samuel's story really makes you think about our own lives, doesn't it? His legacy was this unwavering commitment to prayer and to always pointing people back to God. And so that leaves us with a final question, something to really chew on. As we get closer to our own final days, what kind of legacy will we leave for the people who come after us?